Now, what do we have here? Oh, so all these duos, all these pairs, right? And if you've watched any of these shows, you know that are these two pairs, are both the people in the pairs the same? No, they have different personalities, right? But what do all these pairs have in common besides being on the same television show? They all kind of work together despite their very different personalities. So your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, they're not complete opposites. They're very different from each other. But in order to carry out the functions of your body, they need to work together. So again, different personalities, but they're not like fighting against each other. They're not opponents. They're actually co-workers, but very different types of personalities between the co-workers. All right, so you have your sympathetic division here, and you have your parasympathetic division. And just at the surface value, you can already tell that they're different in their layout, but they're also different in their function. But let's go over the anatomy a bit. All right, so again, the two main divisions, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Now the sympathetic division, you see all of these here. And what do we have here? Well, let's get rid of a lot of hold off on the details for now. So what we have here are a bunch of thoracic roots on the spinal nerves. And we also have a bunch of lumbar roots as well. So this is why the sympathetic division is also called the thoracolumbar division, because you notice that all of these spinal nerves, they're coming from both the thoracic and the lumbar areas of the spinal cord. So you may have heard of this too, the fight or flight response. And especially if you're taking psychology, you definitely have heard this, right? So sympathetic division is responsible behind this fight or flight response. So again, so they're one and the same in terms of physiology, but it's actually a little refined. So something is like when you're on high alert, when you get this very, like if you're something crazy happens and you want to respond, well, some people they want to fight whatever the threat is. Some people run away from it, but some people also sometimes anxiety and getting scared is also part of it. So fright and freeze. Some people just freeze when they're in intense situations. Sometimes they're like so but they're so like overwhelmed by it, they can't even fight or flight. They just freeze in place. So that's why it's like kind of expanded. It's not just fight or flight. It's fight, flight, fright, or freeze. Again, I don't know, but they all start with F. So again, this is why it's kind of a good mnemonic. All right, so the sympathetic responses, so things like increased alertness. So again, if you have a fight or flight symptom, just a fight or flight response, well, think of something very scary. Yeah, so think of something very scary happening, right? So sympathetic response is like increased alertness, because again, if you have something extreme happening or some sort of threat, you want to be alert. And then, yeah, metabolism. So what we have here is like increased metabolism. The thing is that if you're trying to run away or fight something, do you want to increase your metabolism and energy expenditures? Yeah, if you're going to run, if you're going to fight something, you're going to be using up a lot of energy. So this is why I see increased metabolism. And yes, I know I froze a bit there. And then increased use of energy reserves. So again, if you're trying to do any of those, like especially the fight or flight part, you want to use your energy reserves because you're trying to get away from the threat or deal with the threat. And increased respiration. The thing is that if you're running away, do you want to hold your breath? Do you want to breathe less? Not really, right? You want to increase your breathing because you're trying to do a running. So the thing about fight or flight isn't necessary, or actually, this is another thing. I'll get to it at the end of this slide. But you also have increased heart rate and blood pressure. So again, if you're running away from something, you want your heart to start pumping the blood, because again, you need all those energies to circulate, all your energy, all the nutrients, and all the oxygen to circulate throughout your body, and also circulate the carbon dioxide out of your body. Increased sweat gland activity. This is due to, again, increased metabolism and all that physical exertion if you're doing the flight part. So you're going to have increased sweating as well. So what do we see here in the sympathetic response? Pretty much everything is increasing, but not everything in the body increases. What doesn't increase are things like digestive and urinary functions. So if you're actually trying to run away from a scary boar or a dog that's threatening to bite you, well, are you going to be thinking about using the bathroom or digesting what you had for lunch? That's like low on your priority list, right? So when you're doing something, you have a sympathetic response, you're not going to slow down the digestive and urinary functions. You're not thinking about eating and digesting and using the bathroom at that point. You want to get away and deal with the threat. But is sympathetic always something negative? Another comment or another easy way to think of it that's not necessarily negative is exercise. So another trigger of the sympathetic response is exercise. So what happens during exercise? Well, your metabolism increases, you increase your energy reserves, you increase your respiration, you increase your heart rate and blood pressure. All of these increase except for your, again, digestive and urinary functions. All right, so sometimes another nickname for the sympathetic nervous system is the E division. So the E division, so I like to use this mnemonic. I'd like to think of this anatomy of the sympathetic nervous system like a bunch of E's stacked on each other. But what does E stand for? So again, not sympathetic does not necessarily mean negative. So again, exercise is beneficial for your body. So exercise triggers all of these things. Again, you want to increase your energy expenditure and also get your heart pump and blood pumping. And you also want to increase your respiration as well. Then excitement. Thing is about what happens if you're all of a sudden surprised by a surprise party or you're getting very excited about something. Well, you probably feel your heart pounding, right? And you probably like breathe a little faster. Maybe not hyperventilate, but that could happen as well. Emergencies, again, fight or flight, and that's fight or freeze. You want to deal with some sort of emergency situation. Something's getting gnarly, you want to deal with it. And embarrassment. So this is also another thing that fits within it. It's not so much like excitement, but it is emotional response that can trigger the E division. All right, so the parasympathetic system. So now what we have here is the other part of the autonomic nervous system. Now we have the parasympathetic. It's also, well, notice where you have the nerve fibers running from. We have it running from the cranium, the brain here, but you also have it running from the lower part, the sacrum. So there's no thoracic, there's no lumbar. So this is why it's also called the craniosacral division. Just take cranium plus sacrum, and this is where all these roots come from. And it's also called the rest and digest response. So that was like a hint I threw in with the sympathetic response. Now it's time to actually digest that meal you had. Now it's time to use the bathroom because why? You're not dealing with some sort of intense situation or threatening situation. And also sometimes called the feed and breed response. So what we have here is, well, we have reproductive organs here, but we also have the digestive system organs here. So again, this is another thing. Instead of fight or flight, it's feed and breed. And the parasympathetic response. So what are the parasympathetic responses? Well, you have decreased metabolism. You have decreased heart rate and blood pressure. You have increased salivary and digestive gland secretion. So again, now it's eat time, now it's digest time. And then we have increased digestive tract motility and blood flow. So basically the digestive tract increases its overall movement and actions and activity, and also you have increased blood flow to your digestive organs as well. You also have stimulation of urination and defecation, so pretty much number 1 and number 2. So now it's time to use the bathroom, and then the other thing is increased tear production. That's something that you didn't really cover with the sympathetic, but it does affect that. And then increased sexual arousal. So again, this is why it's also called the feed and breed response. The parasympathetic nervous system does innervate again, genitalia and reproductive organs of both sexes. So this is what we have with the parasympathetic response. All right, so then here we have another nickname. So remember how the sympathetic division is called the E division? Well, the parasympathetic is all about the D division. So it's the D division. So I like to, it's not official this, but I like to think, okay, it kind of looks like a D here. So D for downtime. It's time to relax. It's no longer that intense situation you have with the sympathetic nervous system. And digestion. So now it's time to actually eat, digest, and absorb what you ate. And diuresis. So that's a medical term meaning the production of urine. And if you're going to nursing or medicine, definitely should know this. So now it's time to produce urine and also get rid of it as well. And defecation. So defecation, again, medical term meaning producing feces, taking a poo, right? So this is why it's also known as nicknamed the D division.